Hey guys, it's Robyn, your independent Scentsy consultant. Welcome back and welcome if you're new. Today I'm just doing a short informational video just on the topic of curing in terms of like wax bars and wax scents and of notes and what ages well and what doesn't age well and how you might want to gauge how a scent might age. So first we'll just talk a little bit about storage and curing. So in this video, just in general, we're talking about wax and home fragrance wax products. They use fragrance oils in wax to give it the scent. You can also apply some of this stuff to perfume, like that you wear on yourself. We're not talking specifically about perfume in this video though. This is going to be about like wax and home fragrance type products. So in general, when you make scented wax, it tends to benefit from some curing time. That time will vary depending on the scents, the wax blend used, because when you use a wax blend, you use different types of wax sometimes, and Scentsy has a proprietary wax blend that they use. Vendors use different types of wax blends as well. So depending on the wax blend used, some benefit from more or less curing time. Curing time just means time that the wax is allowed to sit and kind of just settle. Let the oils meld into the wax, let it kind of just settle and mesh and all of that good stuff. Perfumes do also have to kind of settle and cure as well, but with perfumes in particular, it's called maceration. I'll put that below here. That is the time that the fragrance has to sit and just allow the notes and the compounds to come together. So in wax, that's kind of got two parts. You've got the part where the fragrance oils itself have to settle into the wax, and then you've got the second part, which is just aside from the wax, the fragrance itself needs time to get stronger and kind of mature sometimes. So most of the time when you're buying something like Scentsy or a retail wax, it doesn't really need to cure. It can be used out the gate in theory. Sometimes what we find though, especially with some of our Scentsy blends, is if you've ever had the experience where you get a new Scentsy scent, you think, I really like this scent, but it's a bit too light for my home, and then you don't buy any more. You just have one bar left or something, you put it away, and then you don't buy any more, and then it goes away. And then in a few months, you take that old bar out and it's suddenly much better performer. It's way stronger, it's doing way better in your house, and you wish you had more. That happens to us all the time. So that is the result of curing. That is just the result of the scent sitting for a while, kind of really settling into the wax. Some of those base notes may be coming out a bit more, and that is what tends to happen. So there are a couple ways to kind of gauge what might make a scent age well. To start with, you want to make sure you're storing your wax in an ideal way. So the enemy of fragrance oil of any kind, whether it's perfume, wax, fragrance oil, any of it, the enemy of all scents is heat, light, and humidity. They don't like those things. So if you live in a hot, humid climate, you're going to want to find somewhere to put your wax that is relatively climate controlled if you can. But definitely try to reduce the humidity and never, ever, ever let your wax sit in sunlight. UV rays and sunlight are the enemy of all scent. Not just Scentsy, not just wax, of all scent. So perfumes, anything that you have that is scented, keep it away from sunlight, direct light, humidity, and heat. That will help prolong the lifespan of all of your scented things. So with my wax, I store it in like plastic storage drawers, and I have those in a room of my house that doesn't get a whole lot of direct sunlight, and the sunlight it does get does not hit the wall that my wax is stored on. So my wax drawers never ever ever get sunlight on them. So they don't see sunlight. It is relatively climate controlled, and it never gets that hot here in northern Canada. I mean, it does get hot, but it never gets like crazy hot. So the only way to know for sure whether a scent will age well is to age it and find out. However, you can get pretty good at gauging what might be a good aging scent and what might not be. So as a general rule, your top notes tend to oxidize and kind of just leave quicker. So your citrus scents in particular, citrus tends to be the scent that will cure the least well. So citrus scents don't tend to age very well at all. Those ones tend to get less strong with time. They tend to get kind of an odd tone with time. Citrus scents do not, as a rule, age well. There is an exception with Scentsy. Be Fabulous, I have found, does age relatively well. And I haven't found Scentsy's citrus scents to deteriorate as quickly as like perfumes that I have with citrus notes. Citrus perfumes tend to not do all that well with time, but in general, if you're buying a bar to store for a few years, citrus isn't a good one to do that with. You want to use your citrus bars within the time span of like a year or two, for sure. Other notes that tend not to age super well are florals. So things like your bright, sweet spring florals, your tulip type notes, your summer type florals like the hibiscus and the passion flower and those types of florals. Rose notes as well. Rose is a strong floral. It is one that doesn't tend to age super well though. And if there are base notes in the blend with the rose, those base notes will kind of amp up and the rose will not amp up. And so you'll end up with a different tone of scent because the base notes are going to amp and the floral will either stay the same or it'll go down a bit. So you're going to end up with a very different balanced scent than you had before. Other notes that tend to not age super well are greens. So your fresh grassy notes, your dewy green type notes, even pine notes sometimes. Pine doesn't do too bad, but they're not one that ages super, super awesome. I wouldn't put those green type scents away to age for years and years. Fruity scents also, not ones that you'd probably want to save for years and years. They will age okay for a couple years, but they don't get better with age. So generally, the ones that don't get better with age are going to be your citrus. I would use those fairly quickly. Your sweet florals, your light florals, your summery florals don't tend to get better with age. Use them relatively quickly. Your green scents are not going to improve with age most likely. So in general, scents that don't improve with age and may actually get a little bit worse with age are your citrus, your fruity scents, your green scents, your florals, and that's kind of those ones. Those are not ones that are necessarily going to go bad quickly in wax form, but they are going to just not get better in general. And that may change depending on what else is in the blend. So say I'm thinking something like banana leaf and bamboo. That is a green scent. So the top notes there are definitely greens. Those tend to not get better with time, but that scent also has mahogany in it. Mahogany is a base note. Mahogany will get stronger with time. So that one may change with balance. If you saved it for 3 years or something, you may find the green notes depleted just a little bit and the mahogany probably comes up a bit. So you may end up with a very different balance of scent than you originally started with, which was a very green scent with just a tiny bit of mahogany. You may find that in years it is more of a mahogany balance type scent than it started out to be. Ones that do age well. So these are things that you're looking for if you want a scent that you think is going to age well or maybe get stronger with time. So if you get a bar, especially vanilla tends to be the biggest culprit for this because vanilla starts quite light often and vanilla gets very strong with time. So your vanilla scents are going to age really well. Patchouli can go either way. Patchouli can age very well, and in my experience with Scentsy, it does. Scentsy's patchouli tends to age quite well. Woods and sandalwood are almost always going to get stronger with time. And when I say woods, I don't mean like pine. Pine is more of one of those ones that doesn't necessarily get stronger with time. It kind of just stays the same for a while and then starts to kind of diminish. But sandalwood and like oak and woods and those sorts of things will get stronger with time usually. Amber, musk, those kind of perfumey tones tend to strengthen with time, and leather. Leather tends to increase in strength with time too. So if you're looking at a scent, you need to kind of just look at the scent pyramid and like the notes that are in it. Which of those notes are top notes? And those ones are probably going to either stay the same or get a little bit lighter. And if the notes that you like and want to be stronger are the vanillas and the woods and all of those base notes, those probably will get stronger with time. So I'm thinking of something like Blue Grotto. This scent is a very much citrus scent. This one doesn't have a whole lot of base notes to it. It does have some lush botanicals, which are like green notes. So this one is all citrus and all green. This one is a very strong scent, a very good performer. This one does not get any stronger by sitting around though. So this is one that is best to use when you get it. You can store it for a couple years. I've never had this bar go off on me, but it's not one that would benefit from curing. So this one would be one that I would use right away. I would say use it immediately. There's nothing in here that's going to get better after sitting. So that is Blue Grotto. Then we have something like Frosted Cedar. This particular bar is Red Delicious Apple, a fruity note, vanilla, a base note, and Frosted Cedar. So this one has woods, it has vanilla, and it has a very light sweet fruit. The apple note in this is probably not going to get stronger with time. The apple note is probably as strong right now as it's ever going to be. Now this scent is fairly new, so I don't know how this ages. If I had to predict, I would say if I sat this aside for 2 or 3 years, what I would end up with in the end is a softer apple note and a much stronger woodsy presence here than I smell on cold now. So I think with time, the cedar is going to come out more in this one. The vanilla is probably going to amp a little bit as well. And the apple will either stay the same or be overpowered a bit more by the cedar. So that's kind of how I make those predictions on how things will age. I think this will smell great in a few years, but I think it would be a different balance. I think this right now is a very fruity scent with just a hint of woodsy. I think if you let this sit a few years, it would probably be more of an even blend of woods to apple. So there's that one. Then we have something like pumpkin roll, say. This is a vanilla bakery goodness type scent. It has some nutty tones, it's got some spice, it's got vanilla and cake and bakery type scents. So this one is going to be one that probably ages well. I have had bars of this that sat for a while. They did get a bit stronger. And this one, I do find spice notes tend to get stronger with time too. So if they're like, I'm thinking Christmas Cottage, for example. Christmas Cottage has raspberry, Valencia orange, and cinnamon. So you got your raspberry and your orange, you got a citrus and a fruit. Those two notes do not get stronger with time. Those two notes actually get overpowered by that cinnamon quite quickly after some age. So with Christmas Cottage, if you have a fresh bar, it's a nice sweet orange raspberry with a bit of cinnamon. If you let that thing sit for a year, the cinnamon takes over. It really does. And you still smell a little bit of the raspberry and a little bit of the orange, but that orange especially takes a back seat. And you've got a little bit of raspberry and a lot more cinnamon. That cinnamon gets stronger with time. The raspberry stays a little bit the same and the orange just kind of backs right off. So you end up with a very different balance of scent than you started out with. So that is kind of how things work with aging and with curing. Something like Candy Crave, where it is just cotton candy, raspberry sorbet, and marshmallow. That is just tooth-achingly sweet and good. That one is very light when it's new. And those ones do tend to benefit from sitting as well. So the vanilla in that kind of amps. The marshmallow, which is mostly vanilla, also amps over time. The raspberry sorbet does not get stronger, but Candy Crave also has a bit of a musky tone to it. That's kind of like a body care scent. And that gets stronger with time. And that is actually, I think, what carries that bar for days and days and days in your warmer. So again, that one does not perform very well at all when it's new. If you let it sit for 6 months to a year, it's a different bar entirely. It is stronger, it lasts longer, it's a better performer because that vanilla and that musk has had time to really develop. So that's kind of how I keep in mind what I think is going to age well. Is there musk and amber? Those are probably going to age well and get stronger. Vanilla will get stronger. Leather, suede, wood notes, those are all going to get stronger with time. The notes that don't get stronger with time are your florals, your fruity, your citrus, your green type notes. All of those things are going to kind of just stay as is or get lighter. So that is just kind of how to kind of gauge what changes might occur in a scent that you're looking at. So if you're thinking of a scent, and this is especially helpful for club cut time, if you're thinking of should I stock up on this bar or should I club it? Because if you stock up on it, you have a stockpile of it that you're going to be keeping for a couple of years until you work through it. If you put it in your club, you're theoretically going to be getting fresh bars of it consistently over time. So as far as clubbing versus stocking up, if you have a bar that is fruity or that is like citrusy or anything that is kind of like those top notes, florals, greens, that sort of thing, and those are the notes that you like in that bar, those I would say put in your club and just get new ones consistently. If you have something like vanilla suede or vanilla oud, for example, any kind of spicy bakery scent like gingerbread donut ages well, that I know. Candy Crave, rum raisin cookie, all those kind of like bakery scents, vanilla based scents, anything with like suede or leather or woods, if those are the scents that you like and you like those aspects of those scents, those are ones you can probably safely stock up on. Not to say you shouldn't club them, because I mean, they may never come back, you never know, but those are fairly safe bets to stock up on. A note about maple. So in Scentsy's, I can only speak to Scentsy's maple here, because Scentsy's the only maple note that I've used a lot of. There is Scentsy's maple in gingerbread donut, for example. There's also Scentsy maple in vanilla maple glaze, and in French toast, and in cinnamon vanilla maple. There's a whole bunch of maple scents from Scentsy. Scentsy's maple note does tend to get stronger with time, but not necessarily in a good way. It gets stronger and kind of throws the balance of the blend off. It kind of gets almost like a burnt sugar tone to it, and tends to throw the balance off the scent. So when Scentsy makes a bar, and they're doing the thing in the laboratory where they create the scents to be just what they want them to be, they're expecting you to smell it new. So here's a new bar of frosted cedar. This smell I'm smelling right now is how Scentsy designed it to smell. Because the base notes are the notes that tend to increase in strength, It's also the base notes that are the ones that kind of carry the longevity of the scent. So when you first put a scent in the warmer, you're going to smell the top notes, which are your like florals, your fruity scents, your kind of light, airy stuff. Then the mid notes are kind of the heart of the scent. You've got like your sometimes spice and that sort of thing. Sometimes like leafy or herbal notes. There's various types of mid notes. And then you got your base notes, which are usually your vanillas, your woods, those sorts of things, your leathers, that sort of thing. That tends to be the base, and those tend to be the longer lasting oils in the warmer as well. Those ones just take longer to burn off. The top notes tend to burn off in the warmer within a few hours, and you're left with kind of those base notes. So that is kind of how that works, and the base notes, as I said, do get stronger with time. So as a result, your wax lasts longer in the dish and usually performs better because those base notes are more strong at that point. So that is just kind of a little bit of an explanation in layman's terms, because I'm by no means a professional in scent. This is just kind of like my experiences with scent. I've been into like niche perfumery and bath and body stuff and home fragrance for like 15 plus years, since I was a kid. So this is kind of just my observations with time and in my experiences, and particularly with Scentsy. Yeah, Scentsy's rule of thumb and Scentsy's official statement is that you should use your wax within 1 to 2 years. I think most of us have wax that is much older than 2 years old that is still very, very good and is still going to perform very, very well. So while the official statement is use it within a year or two, I've only had like maybe 1 bar or so go off on me. And I think that was because I purchased it secondhand and I don't think it was stored correctly before I got it. So I think storage of your wax is a place where you can really, really have some impact on how long your wax lasts. So if you live somewhere like Florida where it's very humid and very hot, I would say you're probably going to have a more challenging time keeping wax good for a long period of time than if you lived in like my climate where it's northern Canada. It doesn't really, we're nowhere near an ocean. There's nothing super humid here and it is cold most of the time. I think my wax probably is easier to keep long term than someone who lived in Florida, for instance. How do you know if your wax has gone bad? So sometimes people will message me and say, look, my bar of sugar or my bar of pink haze has turned brown. What is going on? So those are typically pink bars, and those bars do tend to discolor. So vanilla is notorious for turning brown, and that is across the board, not just Scentsy. Like in perfume, in wax, in bath and body stuff, vanilla oil discolors to brown. It just does. That is how it works. So you may find your vanilla heavy blends, sometimes they'll make them brown, and I think it's because they discolor. So sometimes Scentsy will make those vanilla heavy blends into like a tan or a brown color so the discoloring isn't as noticeable. I think that's why we see so many beige and brown tone bakery blends. But if you have a bar that is turning brown and it has vanilla in the notes, that's all that is. That doesn't necessarily impact the quality of the scent or the throw or anything like that. Vanilla just tends to discolor with time. So color, not necessarily an indication that it's gone bad, but if something starts to discolor, it does mean it's been in your stash for a while and you should probably get to using it, but it's still fine. The way you're going to tell if something has actually gone off is by smell. So if it has condensation, that's normal. Condensation just means it's been in some humidity. You probably want to check your environment for the wax and kind of reduce the humidity if you can, because bars will get sweaty if they've been too hot or in a humid environment. My bars rarely get sweaty, but I know people who live in Australia, their bars are often sweaty because they live in a humid place. But again, that's going to depend on your local humidity levels and all of that stuff. But smell is the way you tell if your bar has gone off. If your bar smells bitter or acidic or sour in any way, and it didn't used to smell that way, that is a good indication that it is going off and you may want to use it up immediately or just toss it. Like I said, I've only ever had 1 bar go off on me, and I think it was stored incorrectly because it was very, very sweaty. I think it had been exposed to sunlight. It was all kinds of weird colors. And so I think that one had just been stored in sunlight and gotten humid and UV rayed. So that one did kind of go sour and acidic, and that was a bad bar. I had to throw it away. So that is kind of the way to tell if your bar is off. If it's discoloring or if it's sweating, that just is a sign of, hey, do I need to warm this bar, or has this bar been stored in a place that is not quite right, and make adjustments to your storage or just use it up. If it is starting to smell off, that means it is at the end of its life. If your bars are going off and it's before the couple year mark, that is a good indication that storage needs to be adjusted somehow, because generally the bars do last for years. And that is across the board. Scentsy, I find lasts a long time as well. I've also had vendor wax that lasts years as well, but Scentsy tends to store quite well. And again, I'm no authority on this subject. If you have ideas on observations that you've made on what ages well and what doesn't, please put them below so we can share experiences. If you have any storage tips on what does and doesn't work, put those below too. But I find, yes, out of direct sunlight, in somewhere that breathes, not airtight preferably, in like a regular temperate, like room temperature space, works really well. So in a nutshell, if you're asking yourself, will this bar age well? You want to look at the top notes and look at the base notes. And if the thing that you like about that scent tends to be vanilla or woods or any of that kind of thing, it's probably going to age well. It's probably going to be even better for you in a year. If the thing you like about that scent is a citrus tone or a bright floral note, that is probably going to not benefit from curing time. It's not going to necessarily be worse in a year, but it's not likely going to be better in a year either. So that's kind of how you tell that one. As a general rule, that does also mean that winter scents tend to cure better than like summer scents, because summer scents do tend to be those lighter, airier florals, those fruity scents, those citrus scents, and those tend to not benefit as much from aging. Whereas your spicy scents, your bakery, vanilla, woodsy scents that do tend to be our fall winter line, do tend to get better with age. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any comments or questions, put them below. Would love to hear your thoughts and your experiences as well. Other than that, I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.